Nos histoires en disent long sur nous. Elles racontent ce que nous aimons et comment. Ce qui nous touche, nous étonne ou nous effraie. Elles disent ce que nous étions et ce que nous deviendrons. Nos histoires façonnent qui nous sommes. Voilà pourquoi le Fonds des Médias du Canada accompagne le meilleur des histoires canadiennes et autochtones.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. Je vous rappelle qu'il y a des participants en ligne qui nous écoutent, donc il ne faut pas les oublier. Et cet après-midi, l'activité se déroulera en anglais et sera menée de main de maître par Madame Gaëlle Essoo, que je vous présente ici, et qui, elle, va présenter ses panélistes. Alors, merci beaucoup d'être là et bon après-midi.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. On est un petit groupe très intime, donc j'ai hâte qu'on puisse discuter entre nous. The conversation will take place in English, but everybody speaks almost everybody speaks French, so we'll use both languages if needed, and we'll translate live if needed as well. And hello to people joining us online. So yes, my name is Gaëlle Essoo. I'm the Senior Manager, Growth and Inclusion at the Canada Media Fund. And I'm really excited to be here for this conversation today about the importance of diversity in storytelling. So joining me, I'll try to respect the order in which people are sitting. It's going to be easier. Thomas Möller. You're from Germany. You're the author of the book Greetings from Mars, Allô la Terre, ici Mars, which has been adapted into a feature film that you can actually check out at the festival tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. And you're also the screenwriter for that very film. So the story revolves around Tom, a little boy with a wild and vivid imagination, and he also happens to be autistic.
Yeah,
I'll
that's right.
leave it there, and then we'll discuss further. Antonello, Cozzolino. I hope I'm not butchering like everybody's names, but you are the vice president and producer for fiction at Attraction, and you recently produced the film Mademoiselle Bottine, which tells the very touching story of a recently orphaned little girl who has to live with her uncle. Her uncle has to take care of her, and he is battling his own demons, anxiety, depression, and so on. Alice, Morel-Michaud, you're an actress, you're a familiar face in the Quebec film and media industry, and you recently launched a podcast called Miroir, Miroir, Mirror, Mirror, about body image on audio, where the targeted audience is the youth, teenagers, and even sometimes even younger, preteens, young adults.
Yeah, sure.
So you'll have, a lot of insight to share with us. And finally, Alain, Jacques. Alain, Scénariste, réalisateur. You worked for several productions, including Passepartout, and you're currently developing a feature film called Fais-moi signe, which will center on the deaf community here in Quebec. Welcome to all of you, and I think we have a little bit of an excerpt of everybody's work to share with the audience.
Nos histoires en disent long sur nous. Elles racontent ce que nous aimons et comment. Ce qui nous touche, nous étonne ou nous effraie. Elles disent ce que nous étions et ce que nous deviendrons. Nos histoires façonnent qui nous sommes. Voilà pourquoi le Fonds des Médias du Canada accompagne le meilleur des histoires canadiennes et autochtones.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Des millions, well you love today, can't feel it. Say what? Go sit down on my way. Come on, last time on bouge cette chose. Shake your shit, on bouge cette chose. Même si t'as oublié ce que ta maman t'a donné. Yeah, no, last time on bouge cette chose. Shake your shit, get down, come on, bouge ton bain. S'il y avait personne d'autre ici, oh, I'm so glad you could stay now. Yeah. I was going other coast, I went goddamn living.
Il y a 70% des gens qui sont insatisfaits de leur image corporelle. Miroir, Miroir, c'est un balado documentaire sur l'image corporelle. Donc, on me suit dans ma quête sur 1 an pour essayer de comprendre qu'est-ce qui influence positivement ou négativement notre image corporelle.
Bravo. Yeah. So this conversation is about diverse point of views and the fact that for a long time in our media, on our screens, a lot of people did not see themselves represented, or they didn't see themselves represented with authenticity. So I think that's the case for a lot of us. So my first question to all of you, and I want to hear from all of your experience recently with the things that you've been working on. Did you get any feedback from audience members, podcast listeners, people you interacted with, who came to you and thanked you because for the first time maybe they saw themselves authentically represented? Who wants to start?
You. I want to start. Yes, What happened when we showed Greetings from Mars at festivals was that there were a lot of school classes coming to the festivals in Germany, and it was nice that the teachers that came with the group very often later on waited for us to tell us they have a pupil that is within the spectrum, and that they were so happy that they could see this movie because, and they were very happy with the presentation of this. It didn't happen that someone that's in the spectrum came to us directly, but that was that a teacher came to us or a mother came to us. That happened several times, but the nicest one was with I write children's books as well, and that was originally a children's book. And another book that we wrote is about a boy who has a secret, and the secret is that he can't properly read and write. And he's very good at hiding this, even though he's just entered 4th grade, so he's 10 years old. And we were reading from this book at a school, and a boy stood up that was listening to us and said, "That's just like with me." And that he had the guts to stand up and say this. I almost cry when I tell this because it was so moving. That's why you write this. And so that was the most wonderful moment.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. He felt seen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. I don't think I can pinpoint one example, but we're very sensitive about the EDI inclusion in all our scripts. Every time we work on a script, either a movie or TV series, we have a team that goes over the script, and of course we always put the story, the creation ahead of everything. There's no way we can avoid to make sure that everything is according to, I don't want to say new standards, but a new way to see reality, a new way to include everybody, but for the good reasons. And the key point is the good reasons. And in two different cases, it happened in a table read with one is with a female director, that we have this script about this bunch of kids at school, and one of them is a bit of a nerd. And in one of her class, his class, it's a young boy. He has to remove his shirt, his sweatshirt, and underneath he's got a T-shirt, but he's a bit chubby. So when he removes, the writer wrote, when he removes the sweatshirt, his belly comes up, and that was supposed to be funny in the writer's view, and everybody around the table went silent, and it wasn't something prepared. It was just a natural awareness of physical differences, that it's not funny anymore. The body is not the subject of a joke, and that was done in such a very respectful way, because the writer is a good writer, and he's not homophobic, or he's stuck in an era, or stuck with a presumption that's still funny, and it's not anymore. And that was so clear to everybody that when it happened, and immediately we changed it, and he agreed to change it, because of course I didn't see it, but those are just human old reflexes that don't exist, or exist less today, and that was such a nice moment. So that's the first example. The other example was we were crafting a rom-com for a broadcaster, for a platform, for a streamer. And rom-coms are basically all the same. Two people that they can't stand each other, have to do something together, and at the end they end up together because they finally realize that they're made for each other. And since they're all the same and all boring, but the story was good. But when the broadcaster got it, said, "Oh yeah, it's good. You're doing everything right, but there's nothing new." Because I think the couple was just a couple hétérosexuel, we're just like a girl and a guy. So we switched it to a couple homosexuel, and it made the whole difference. Not because they were homosexuals, because the stereotypes of what they were doing, when you transpose them, when you project them into a different genre, they become interesting, because people don't react the same way according to who you are, what you were born with, and how people see you. And that made the world of a difference in the perception and the reading, and also in the behaviors of those characters. And the story became interesting, because it wasn't expectable anymore. So those are two different. I think that the society has evolved, so the perception changes.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see that it's happening organically too.
Totally.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we got some nice feedback when we were actually making the podcast. So we traveled a bit around the province to meet groups of teenagers in schools, and we asked them questions about their body, their perception of others, and so it was kind of an open discussion, a group discussion in class, or in groups of few people. And at first they were always very shy and very, they didn't want to put themselves out there. And afterwards, almost each time after the hour had gone by, they had all opened up, and they were kind of looking at each other differently. And they actually thanked us, because a lot of them said, we don't get the chance, the opportunity to talk about these subjects in class. We don't talk about this during lunch break. And sometimes some of them were close friends, and they never talked about their insecurities or their body image. So it was very interesting to see, as we were making the podcast, that it could have an impact, that actually discussing this topic could have an impact with teenagers. So we hope that this would translate into the podcast and the listeners.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. It's much needed conversation, for sure. Thank you. Alain.
Okay, it's my turn. So I have to tell you that I have my own translator because of my English. So I have a specific example of this. Here in Quebec, we have a well-known program for children who is known Passepartout. And on this program, everybody is white, all the actors. So we made a remake of Passepartout, and I had the chance to be on this rebuild of this well-known program, and we opened the casting at everybody, every kind of origin, if you want. And one of the characters, it's a guy, it's a farmer, a man, and we decide to take Haitian actor, who is very good, and we received some feedback about this. That congratulations, you open to somebody else, and he is very good. So, and it's not. We don't surligner. We don't highlight, thank you. We don't highlight this on the program, but he's just there because it's a man who is in a farm and is friend with other people. So I think it's a good move that we did that.
Yeah, that's good
it was with Attraction also.
I think Alain is being a bit humble because Passepartout is one of the most popular TV series for kids for years. You know, people bought DVDs, the people grooved them. It's like the Teletubbies. You know, it's the same impact on the people.
It's an institution.
Yeah, so for them to change the origin of some characters, it's a bold move because they could have said no, the Quebecois are white and just stick with the old guns, but you did a very good, and it went very well. You know, the reception, everything. You applauded your move, so congratulations.
Yeah, décision osée. And your English is perfect, so I don't know what you know.
Just wait.
What you were talking about.
For the moment.
Yeah.
I pay a translator for this.
Have to make him work a little bit then. Any questions at this point? I'm not sure if I want to necessarily keep it to the end. Yes.
It's not more a question than a comment. I just want to make a catastrophe. I'm not sure. I like your anecdote about Passepartout, and I was. You will say that I'm weird, but I thought about Star Wars. Explain myself. I don't know which number in the Star Wars saga because it's so confusing. I love Star Wars, but I mix all the movie. But there was one, a recent one, with a black actor as a main character of the movie. And this actor was harassed online because people say, oh, why a black guy in a Star Wars? And some people online made joke about, well, you don't know who did the voice of Darth Vader with James Earl Jones, a great actor. So my point about that, thinking about Star Wars and Passepartout, is when the universe is defined and people have expectation, I was wondering, from your experience, if it's more difficult to put diversity, new kinds of character in a movie, a TV series. No, Passepartout is for children, and we know that they're sometimes much more open than their parents and adults. Mm-hmm. So when you have a universe like Star Wars, like everybody have expectation and they all know what to do with this kind of universe, if it's more difficult to put diversity, I mean, at one point, maybe someone would say, oh, our Han Solo will be gay, or no, I mean, we don't do that in a Star Wars universe. So I would like to hear from you if it's more difficult to put diversity and being audacious when you have an universe well-defined with adults and with all the prejudice of all adults have when they watch a movie or a TV series.
I think that it's a challenge for established IPs. You know, James Bond. James Bond's been always Irish.
Like a black James Bond.
Yeah, but
I would love it, but do you think it would be possible?
Yeah, but
Would be a producer of James Bond.
No, but I wish. even more subtle. You know, James Bond is British spy. You know, can an American white dude play James Bond? That's also a gap, you know. So there's subtleness in your question. I think there's two challenges. First, authenticity. You want to be authentic. Today, you can't have Italian actors in an Italian movie speaking English. That's a nonsense. But it used to be like that, you know. The German soldiers in war movies, they used to speak English. It can't happen anymore. So in Quebec, if you make a movie or TV series that's historical, you know, back in the 40s there was very, very less immigration in Canada and Quebec. So if you go with diversity actresses, it doesn't feel right. So you have to fight that. You have to justify that. So the authenticity, the historical production is a challenge. Anything more contemporary, it's a lot easier. Today, I think people not only accept it, but I think they welcome it. You know, if the actor, the actress is great, I think you can sell it. That's my point of view. That's how I go at when we cast movies, when we cast directors, when we think of we're crafting the environment of our productions. But it's a challenge for certain areas because you want to be authentic.
And I think that, to your point, children tend to care a lot less about those things. They tend to be more empathetic. They tend to connect when stories are being told honestly. I think they really they really embark on the story when it's a good story and it's told with.
Thank God, and I think that the next generation are there for that because they're changing the world. You know, I'm 57. Yes, and I grew in at a different era. But when I speak to my son, he's 20. He doesn't see people the same way. He doesn't have the same reaction. Doesn't have the same. He's totally different. There is no difference in color, body shape, orientation. They don't care. It's amazing how they are different and much more open than we are.
Yeah, they're naturally
it's unbelievable, and we have to build on that. We have to work with the youngsters. We have to work on la relève.
Absolutely.
I have an anecdote about this. Yeah. My son was in the school, and I want to talk with him about one of his friend, but I don't want to say he's black. So I try. You know, he making jokes. His kind of hair, this kind, and I turn around, and at the moment I said, "Okay, he's black." He said, "Alfonso, yes, he's not black. He's
brown."
Brown.
That's amazing.
Okay, so we don't see the same.
Yeah, they haven't imported the same systems and the same barriers, which is good to hear. And talking about authentic storytelling and children, what do you think are, because yes, definitely in the past years we've seen improvements, we've seen beginning of movements of change post 2020 and all of that, and it's translated into some great changes, but we're not there yet. I mean, there's still a long way to go. And of course, we're seeing now a lot of resistance because with every progressive movement, you tend to, face that setback. And I think we're right in the middle of it. What do you think are some of the risks for our younger generations if we fail at this opportunity? If we, don't fully embrace showing people, diverse characters on screen, people, deaf people, people with who are just, and I don't like that word, different, because that means that there's a norm, but just like embracing the natural diversity of the population. What are the risks if we don't do it properly? Don't fight.
I'm a bit more optimistic than your question. I think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen right now in a perfect way. I think it's going to take time, but I think we're on a path. What the setback we're experiencing right now, I think it's totally normal, because when you have this pendulum, the movement goes to the extreme, then it causes a reaction, then it goes to the other extreme, then at the end it's going to end up in the middle. So that we should end up in a much better society than before. Thing is, what we have to be aware of, what we have to be careful about, is extremism. I think we need the changes. We need to stay open and keep the communication open. If we don't speak, talk, explain, and justify why we do things, why we want to change things, then we become the same people with a moronic attitude or mentality that don't want to change anything. This needs to be a conversation. This needs to be explained and agreed upon amongst everybody, and that is difficult, because when you're suffering, when you want to change things, it's not happening, you want to kick, and then you go to the extreme, and then that creates the setbacks, and it's totally normal. All the big revolution went with extremes, but I would just keep encouraging the communication to make sure it happens, because it's going to happen and it needs to happen.
Thank you.
Yes, I think young viewers demand this. As you said before, they are at a very different point, and they want that shown. They want to represent that's to be represented. They don't want to
wait.
They don't want to wait. But I think what you said is very important as well. I write for a children's detective show in Germany, and it's been on for 25 years, and every 2 years the children change. So because they always are supposed to be in 6th and 7th grade, and there's always a solution why they suddenly have to move away and the others come in. And so every generation has their 2 years of, those are my, the kids are 5 kids, they're called the peppercorns, and these are my peppercorns. Now I'm from that generation, so and when we sit together with all the writers in the room, we decide what kind of kids do we want to have for the next generation. And what that show did, it's been on for 25 years, I'm writing for it for 5 years, is they were very early with, we have to have a kid that has, whose parents come from Turkey, because many people in Germany have migrated from Turkey, and so on. And we have to include this. And this is something that television station wanted, and that was very, very important, that they said, we want to do this, and we want to keep doing this no matter how many letters we receive that we are too, I hate this word, but woke or whatever. But there also is a chance in the writers' room to say, wait a second, if we do this and this and this, we don't have a kid without migration background or a refugee background, so that can't be true either. And this discussion has to be open enough. You don't have to be the bad guys if you mention this, because that doesn't reflect reality as well, or neither. So we always try to build a group of kids where everybody's represented, and
represented of the society as it is right now.
Right. And yes, and you can and everyone can criticize and says, I don't believe that. I think that's too much, and it's open for discussion, which leads back to your point.
Yeah. And if you look at when I mentioned the swing to the extreme, if you look at all the advertising, every advertiser, every bank, every fast food chain, they portray couples. Multiracial, multiracial couples, as if all the society was entirely multiracial, which is not the case. But at the same time, you have to start somewhere. So, I've heard people from the government saying, yeah, well, in Quebec, there's only 13% of immigration, so it's not normal that all the ads are basically multiracials. Yeah, fine, but before it used to be all white, and
all those people
exactly
they
didn't exist. They just didn't exist. So, who's right, who's wrong? Where do you start? I think you need to communicate better. And those swings are normal. They're not always good, but they're normal, and we need to expect them. We have to expect them, and I think it's on the long term. You know, we want things to happen right away, like kids. You know, I want it now. You know, things need to change now. The life is long. You know, so just let's take our time and work for the changes in a good way, in a solid way.
Yes, absolutely. Like, change does take time, but also I know that it's a preoccupation of a lot of broadcasters, unfortunately, with the new generation, who are not really watching TV anymore because they, you know, and as you said, like, they not only not see themselves, but even if they see themselves, they don't see their friends, they don't see, like, the, you know, diversity of, you know, their queer friends represented as much, and they would go, because now the world is open, they could consume content from any part of the world, and we're seeing, and I know that it's a real preoccupation for a lot of Canadian and Quebec broadcasters, that they're losing that younger generation that's just going to consume, not to name them by name, but you know, the mainstreaming platforms who have sometimes content that they feel represents them the best. So I know it's this hard balance between, yes, let's do it well and take our time, but at the same time, like, audiences are, you know, that's like a very...
Yeah, but I don't think youngsters will switch to French Quebec platforms, even though they see themselves portrayed in those platforms. I think that's a lost cause. I think, you know, they're not consuming less. They're consuming more. It's where they consume, you know, and what we think we need to feed them to make sure that they're back. That's not as simple as that, and it's going to take generation to take them back. And I'm not even sure that's going to happen. We just need to make sure that the production, creation, the way our society is represented in our production in the best way possible, and then reaching the young generation by starting when they're young, by se réapproprier, getting the eyeballs back,
of course,
from the mainstreamers. But the mainstreamers are not the bad guys. I mean, they're just trying to do whatever they need to do to make money. It's about us to make sure that if they want to do that, they need to be more present in our environment and produce productions with people from Quebec that represent our reality with our structure démographique, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, because representation is great, but as we said, like, it has to be authentic, it has to be told from, you know, with respect, it shouldn't create more harm. So Thomas, when you wrote your book, what was the initial idea? Like, what prompted you to talk about this little boy?
The initial idea was not to make a movie about a kid that's in the spectrum. The initial idea was, let's make a movie about generations. Let's make a movie about kids that meet their grandparents and that are not connected. We wanted to talk about how our grandparents represented and shown, and we wanted to show them a different way, and we wanted to address the issue that we've experienced, Sebastian, my co-writer, and I, that these generations, because they live in separate parts of the country very often, the younger ones going to the cities, the old ones staying on the countryside, that they have less and less contact, and wanted to address this. And the second idea was that we have a hero that's different, that sees the world in a different way, and that could work like a magnifying glass. And this is a boy who has the lightest form, if you want to, of autism. He's got Asperger, and we wanted to never mention it, but we wanted to explain it nevertheless. We hoped for a result that you realize that maybe as a kid you're first put off because, or puzzled, maybe is the better word. Why is he reacting this way? And then you realize, okay, he's different. Let's see how he gets along, how he does it. And I was afraid that using him kind of as a magnifying glass would seem like and that's your device. That's, you use this him being the way he is. But then I thought, no, we think it's a good idea, and we do it with good intention, and we just try, and it turned out to be okay. And but that was one of the fears I had. I didn't want to use him.
Instrumentalisation.
And at the same time,
Yeah,
it was a way of telling a story. Because what we hoped for was, he's not that different. He has the same fears kids that are not in the spectrum have as well. But it's a little bit stronger, which is great for a movie or a story. So everybody can identify with him because they have the same fears when they are feeling foreign, when things are not the way they used to be. But with him, it's a little bit stronger, and that's what we wanted, and I hope that that's what we reached.
But there's no, you can't do anything about people interpreting your movie according to what they see. So, yeah, fine with it, just go with it, because you have to be true. But whatever people think, they think.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you told the story from your authentic point of view.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
what matters.
Yes.
Of course. Alain?
I just want to add something on this, but I will have to do it in French because I will lose my mind. So, moi, je pense que la clé aussi là-dedans, c'est de ne pas souligner au crayon gras quand il y a une diversité, une inclusion, que cette personne-là, ce personnage-là soit inclus dans l'action, mais que ça ne soit pas « Ah, lui, on l'a mis là parce qu'il est haïtien ou parce qu'il est sourd ou parce que... » Mais il fait partie du groupe.
Yeah, so what he said is just like, he's talking about like the character who's Asian or is from another background. He's not there for that background. He's actually there for just for the story. So whatever happens, he's part of the story. It's not, the story is not happening to him because of how he is or who he is, but he's just part of it.
Yeah, like naturally infused diversity. That's what we're aiming for. Sorry, there's a question.
Yeah, so I also wanted to talk about how you can build with the people, like you can be inclusive in the writing, but also on set. I had this French example, un petit truc en plus. Don't know if you had it from Artus. It's a French movie with all handicapped people. And all the actors in situation of handicap, and it's a challenge too because you can write, but once you're on set, it's like complicated, but it's also really important. And the director, he said that nobody wanted to produce this film. Like they said, nobody wants to see handicapped people in a movie, and it was a huge hit. Like everybody went, like millions and millions of people came to the theaters thanks to this movie. Intouchable also did the same.
That's a good
thing.
example. I was about to say that, Intouchable.
Yeah. So, but in Intouchable, it's still François Cluzet who's not in situation.
And I know about the pitch at Cannes because nobody wanted to buy the movie from the get-go. You know, the movie was up for sale for like 35,000 euros. And now the pitch is this white dude in a wheelchair is pushed around by this black guy from les banlieues. You know, nobody wanted to touch it. And $422 million after, you know, that's a story.
Yeah, that's a story. So Un petit truc en plus is the next step, I guess, because it's, I think for the director it was really complicated to shoot with all this team, but still it's such a beautiful story. So it's, for me, it's a big, nice example of inclusive film from writing to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. From the get-go, not trying to incorporate it as an afterthought, but just like speaking with the right people from the beginning, and including the people who we're representing as much as we can. Alain, I know you've always been sensitive to those to that idea of representation, and in the past few years you've been particularly interested in the deaf community here in Quebec. Can you tell us why and how that happened?
It's more than 3 years, so it's maybe 10 years. Yeah. So I have nobody in my family or in my neighbor is deaf, but for me it's how can I say that? It's a really beautiful language. You know, I talk a lot with my hands, so I learned not the American Sign Language, the LSQ, it's la langue des signes du Québec. And for the beginning, it was just the alphabet. And after that, I discovered this universe, because it's another community, and they are here, they are near us, but we don't see them, because if they don't talk with sign, we don't know that they are deaf people. And they are people with very good sense of humor, another way to see the world. They don't listen radio, sometimes they don't look, they don't read the newspaper, because it's not their first language. The first language is LSQ. So I like these people, and I want to make a project that they include the deaf people. So I write a script. I think it's maybe 20th version of my script, but now I think I have something very interesting for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's the time. We need to talk about different kind of people, and just to tell their stories. And it's not miserable.
Yeah.
He said that.
And you've tapped into something really interesting, which is, you know, new territories, new audiences, like the deaf community. I also, there was a series that I watched like a few years ago, and it just opened my mind to how incredible their references, their world. It's so unique, it's so complex, and they're just like craving for content to be made that reflects their reality. So I think sometimes when we talk about, and I'm looking at you, Antonello, when we talk about, okay, this is an industry, we have to talk numbers, we have to talk money, it has to sell. There's also, so it's that weird combination between we're creating art, but it has to work out, right? And there's been, you know, this, you know, some people tend to think, oh, will, you know, a story about, you know, with a deaf lead work out? Will a story with an autistic boy work out? And there's this impression that it might not, that this, you know, people are not necessarily quick to embark. But I wanted to get your opinion, starting with you. Like, how true is it really?
Well, it's, you know, in Quebec we're very lucky. Our culture is state finance, so we don't have a market. We produce in French, so whatever we produce is basically, I would say, 75% financed by the state, 25% private. So the pressure is not the same if you're in the US or if in the UK, where, you know, all the money is private and you have to generate performance. So in Quebec, the way I approach things, and, you know, I work for a big company, we produce a lot of movies, a lot of television, so yes, there's financial pressure, but if the movie is crafted and the expectations are according to the nature of the movie, there's no differences. When I produce a movie like a more confidential one, like 14 Days and 12 Nights, we shot in Vietnam about this woman that went grieving in Hanoi. You know, the expectation were not, we're going to make $4 million at the box office. The expectations were like, if we hit 650, it's going to be fine. You know, and then everything in the financial structure is according to it. We won't ask for $10 million to make the movie. We're going to ask for much lesser budget, so the risk is less. You know, but if we work on a much more commercial project, and then there's a lot of money, we're asking for a lot of money, then yes, the pressure is on. So we can I think we can basically produce, make anything we want without the pressure if it's pitched and crafted the right way. And you need to be honest. If I make a movie about a deaf person, a deaf kid, and it's very confidential and very sensitive, it's going to hit his auditoire. It's going to hit the mark. But if the mark is this big, then the profit's going to be this big. You just have to tell the truth, you know? Yeah. But I also think if you make an exceptional movie, then the sky's the limit, like Intouchable. Very simple movie. you know? Simple movie, no special effects, no nothing, no stunts. Well, a bit of stunt with the Maserati, but besides the Maserati, this basically simple movie. And you know, next thing you know, it's international success. You know, we've seen it with Anora. You know, Anora, a very indie movie, $6 million, $6 million. That's like not even the fee for an A-lister in the U.S. And you know, five, six Oscars later, you know, it's a success.
Alice, I want to hear from you. You grew up in the public eye here in Quebec. And at some point, people thought that the fact that you grew up in the public eye made it okay to make comments about your appearance. And you've had a remarkable reaction to that. And you decided to take it full on and to actually go and help young people who have similar, you know, who face sometimes similar comments, who are unsure about how to go about with this world that is centered on image. And this is an industry that is centered on image. So you went out and had so many conversations, and what have you learned?
Well, I initially didn't want to talk about it. When I received a lot of backlash for how my body had changed between 2 seasons of a TV show, I was like, I didn't accept any interviews. I didn't want to talk about it just because I felt as it wasn't anyone's business. But then later on, Radio Canada, CBC came to me with this idea, we could talk about it in a podcast, and we could follow your journey through how, you know, body image issues and accepting your body. And I didn't know if I wanted to do it, honestly, because it meant that I had to not only talk about it, but to also be faced with public scrutiny over this subject. And when we began production, it's by talking to young people that I was convinced that it was the right thing to do, because I realized that although I'm still quite young. I'm 26, but still, I was talking to people that were 10 years younger than me. I felt as if they were another generation completely, right. But they struggled with the same things that I struggled with, 10 years later. So I realized that it was an issue that is a challenge for everyone. And actually, we had the same answers. We asked questions, the same questions when we were meeting a 16-year-old girl as when we were meeting a 55-year-old specialist that did like his PhD research on body image. And we asked the same questions. We were like, what is your biggest issue when you look in the mirror? What is your biggest insecurity? And everyone had the same answers. When they were 16, when they were 65, I mean, like a few answers, but I mean, the answers were all very similar. Very similar. And so that's when I realized that it was a topic that could be meaningful to a lot of people, and not only to my personal story and my personal journey. So I decided to be open and to talk about it. And even in my personal life, for the podcast, we actually recorded a few conversations with my friends, and it forced us to talk about it, and we grew closer. And now, a year later, we still talk about it, and we always say we're so thankful that we were forced to address this topic. And I think that's the beauty of sometimes taking on a project that seems counterintuitive or that can be scary when it's your own reality, but when you realize that it's something that we all share, then it becomes meaningful, I think.
Yeah, and liberating, it feels like hearing you speak. And obviously this, as I said, this is an industry that's very much focused on image, and for a long time, the leads in movies were limited to people with a certain physique, and that was not without devastating repercussions on a lot of people, young and old. But especially like the younger ones being more vulnerable, definitely. Do you feel that there's an evolution in that sense recently, positive or negative?
Yes and no. I think there's still a lot of progress that could be done. I think that people are becoming more aware of the impact and the repercussions of having only one body type that is represented in the media. But it's still, and it's the same with a lot of diversity. You know, it's rare that it's the lead. It'll be the best friend,
yeah.
Or it'll be the sister, or
has no storyline of their own.
Exactly, or the funny one. But especially in storylines that are like that. The characters are the love interest of the main character, or if they have a complex storyline, I think it's even more rare. But yeah, slowly.
It's still an exception.
It's still an exception.
So.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Plus, okay. Plus, one thing we always wanted to do with the kids show was that. Again and again, we said it would be nice that this character is an overweight character. So and everybody wanted that. But what was a real problem and still is how to cast this, because casting for 10, 11-year-old children, they have the caster said we have great problem getting child to come to us
because they don't feel it's their place.
Yes,
right?
Yes, and it seems to be a problem to organize it, and I think I found that interesting. I didn't expect this. Maybe it's wrong, but that's what they told us.
That's funny because we're casting a movie, our next movie for a next family movie, after Coco Film, and we go wild casting, so we get a lot of self tapes, and I would say there's no I didn't notice any hold back on kids with bigger bodies, or we have everything, but a lot of them. So I think maybe the younger they are, they don't care. Mais c'est incroyable the amount of self tapes we get from diversity, body, physical, it's seamless, and that's very good.
That's good to hear. I'm actually surprised, and I'm happy. So happy. Yeah, I'm so happy. But I often wonder. I was a child actor, and I don't think I would have had the career that I had if I grew up in a bigger body, honestly. Because a lot of the perks when you want a child in a movie, it's often because they're cute, they're adorable, and I think we tend to have a very limited viewpoint of what that means, what that looks like. And I was cast to be the child of many actors that look nothing like me. Your wife is a good example. Yes. But I think I got the part because yes, I was talented, but also just because people thought I looked like
the part.
I looked the part.
Mm-hmm. She looked good.
No matter what that meant, no matter if my parents had dark hair, dark eyes, and looked nothing like me. So I often think that I wouldn't have had the career that I had, and it was one of the things that was scary is when my body changed as I grew up, and I noticed that I was getting a lot less requests for auditions, and I was just always wondering, is that the reason? And you can never know, because maybe
they're going to tell you to.
Yeah, they're never going to tell me, and maybe I just didn't get the part because. Yeah, it's possible. So yeah, because I wasn't good enough. So many reasons are possible, but it's annoying to have to wonder. And I'm still, I'm a white girl. I'm very privileged. I can audition for basically anything. So I can't even imagine what it's like when you're an actor that faces many, you know,
intersectional challenges.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Any questions from the audience at this point? We have about 10-15 minutes left. Okay.
Maybe that, what was the answer?
Microphone.
Yeah, what was the answer when everybody said the same thing? When you asked about...
Oh, what was the answer about the insecurities?
Yeah.
You know, so many people were saying my belly, my thighs, my acne came up a lot. And we also asked kind of the reverse question, but what are the beauty standards to you right now when you look around you? And same thing, people that were 16 or people that were 65 would say being thin or men having muscles. But it was like the stereotypes that we keep hearing about that we've been hearing about for decades. And maybe I was naive to think that you know, the younger generation would have another definition of beauty standards, but it was all the same things that I grew up hearing, that my parents grew up hearing. So to me, it was sad, but it was also encouraging to know that this kind of project mattered to change the perception.
But this is an interesting point when, as you asked earlier, where do we still have? We still have a long way to go. And then I've got two boys, and one is now almost 15, the other one is 19, and they were the big exception in their class. And I would have never thought that at this time would be the case. That don't go and didn't go to the gym.
Yeah.
And that I told them when I was that age, if one of my friends would have done that, it would be ridiculed.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you go to the gym? What, you know?
Why?
Why? You know? And they are the exception in that class, in their class, and respectively. And I was completely blown by it, that I didn't expect that, and we think we are so far ahead, and we think we've reached so many things in that area, and suddenly that comes back. So I was really surprised, and it hit me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you have an episode on
I have an episode dedicated to gym culture, yeah, because it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, and it's especially when it comes to children, what you know they see on screens, it has such an impact on them, and it can last for, you know, years and years and years. I just wanted to finish up by touching a bit on. Well, maybe might have time for. Okay, maybe it's a touchy subject, but I think we mentioned it a little bit. I wanted to get your thoughts on the fact that, you know, children are naturally empathetic and all of that, and often it's the parents that are in the way. How do you respond to that? Like when it comes to innovative ideas, you know, casting someone who's just very unexpected in a traditional role. Usually, like, children don't really care, but the parents might be the ones that have strong reactions. We've seen, like, when, you know, in Canada, we have a show in English Canada about drag queens reading stories to kids, and in Quebec it was live in libraries, and the children don't care, like, mostly, like, they really don't care. They just find it fun and amusing, but the backlash comes from the parents. How do you approach this in your various roles as creators, producers, actors?
I have big difficulties with that, because, you know, it's personal, you know, and you don't want to be personal in those topics. You want to be as professional as possible. So it's very hard not to get involved, not to get mad at those people, because they're not acceptable. It's very tough. It's not easy to manage. It's real. It happens. We can see it, you know, every day on the news. You know, this big backlash in the U.S. But to be honest, I don't know how to react. I don't know how to behave. I just get mad and I get frustrated. But you know, in our team, we have very strong team in content and that are aware of different ages. So we try to always cover the angle. Always try to find a very good rhetoric behind decision and to explain to people. But it's not an easy situation. It's very difficult.
And as screenwriters, authors, is that something that you have to incorporate at that early stage of creation?
I hesitate to answer because I didn't. Maybe I was just lucky. It didn't happen to me when I write for television. I feel a great amount of freedom. That is not an issue. It comes up if the television producer, has gotten a lot of mails or messages. But as long as they are behind you, and that I was lucky enough to experience that, we could always do what we wanted, and I didn't have to. I didn't experience it. That's why I hesitate to answer. Mm-hmm. I didn't experience it personally. A situation. Yeah, lucky me.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And what about you, Alain? Is that something that you think about at all?
No. Maybe I was wrong, but I didn't think about this. I think about which story I want to tell, which story I want to, the people I want to touch. So I don't think about the
you don't compromise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should.
I didn't say that. We're at time, I think. So, any last thoughts? I think we covered quite a bit.
Thank you for the good questions.
Well, thank you for being here and for being such a nice, part of such a nice conversation. And thank you to the audience. Thank you to FIFEM, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Just so you know, you're all invited to the cocktail that we have in honor of our Korean guest. So it's just when you go out, turn to your right and continue until you hit the wall. Then you'll see the bar. And then you go there, we'll give you a nice coupon that you can exchange for a glass of wine or a beer or whatever. So thank you for coming.